All right, everyone. A little bit of a break there. We are back here for the seventh and final round of Swiss of our Pioneer Showdown. Watch quite a few of our series mainstays, as well as
Mhm.
some, some spicy decks throughout the day. And it kind of all comes down to this. Last round, our top eight will be taking shape, and we will be selecting the final players that are going to be part of our 2024 NRG Championship. Again, coming at you with a Pioneer 5K Showdown from Chicagoland, beautiful Illinois, among one of the staple locations for the NRG series. And I'm here in the booth with Corbin Hossler watching some Pioneer magic. And we got a spicy one for you. We've seen, I think, both of these players at various points throughout the day. Now I believe it is a clean win-in situation for these players. So we're looking at, excuse me, two qualified players for our 2024 championship already, Charlie Dusterberg and Jonathon Zaczek, or better known as Nikachu, who we're going to be watching, I guess, get Thoughtseize off the jump already. Charlie Dusterberg we watched last round against Zoe Riederman, dusting up the creature decks. We'll see if he can do so again here against a little bit of a different look, the Merfolk versus Transmogrify. Now, not a matchup I've seen a lot of in Pioneer.
Yeah, this is a Nikachu special. Not gonna lie, it's Pioneer Merfolk, and I love that he's doing it. You mentioned tournament mainstays and sweet decks. I think we've got all of the above here in this match.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, of
With
course, Charlie Dusterberg, qualified via the August Team Trios Showdown. And then as far as Nikachu goes, he won the June Modern Showdown. So these are two tournament winners looking to become two-time tournament winners here on the 2024 NRG series. And starting out with, I guess, both
vehicles.
standard bannable two-mana artifacts. We've got a
That's right.
Smuggler's Copter and a Reckoner Bankbuster accomplishing
Vehicle
two very different
showdown.
things. Yeah, exactly. Both vehicles, both busted if you're playing the standard format. But that's what Pioneer is all about.
Yeah,
Playing the
here we go.
standard
Crew up
favorites.
the
As we're crewed with
copter.
Mutavault. Oh, yeah, here we go. Boop. Loot. Really key loot here. That unable to scream pretty bad in this matchup, I'd say. Transmogrify doesn't really care if their creatures have text or not too much. I mean,
Yeah,
and
I
hitting
mean,
a
I
Traxa,
guess it.
not great.
We talked about in the last match. Sometimes you can get basically one turn against the Traxa if you can answer it, and I guess the Merfolk deck is the kind of deck where if you are unable to scream the Atraxa on the turn it comes down, maybe you can pull off lethal through that, but not if all your stuff has been removed and losing your powerful 3-drop. Not exactly where you want to be. We're asking, I assume, questions about unable to scream, which I have to say is a really nice piece of tech for blue decks, right? Like it's a great piece of removal. It does not do what it seems Niguchi wants it to do, so it goes to the graveyard.
It sure does. And getting a look at this one, this is one of those cards, it kind of has the humility problem where the loses all abilities. All right, what does that do to the game of Magic when you do that to something? And that question comes up. Look at the vehicles, right? If you were to
Mhm.
put this on your own Smuggler's Copter, could you then crew it again, give it abilities? Is that good? That could be part of what the question's about and all those kinds of things. But as we mentioned, not really good against the opposing creatures, as Charlie Dusterberg's creature column consists of exactly 2 copies of Atraxa Grand Unifier. Not really the card you want for that one. And
Yeah.
decides to discard it to the Smuggler's Copter, which we crewed with Mutavault. I imagine that's not really how you want this game to start, but honestly, it's not that bad. Smuggler's Copter
Well,
quite good against what Charles got going on here, I'd say.
yeah, Smuggler's Copter has been one of those cards that goes in and out of Merfolk. And of course, Nagachu won his NRG event with Merfolk in Modern. But Smuggler's Copter is one of those cards that has, been played in different formats in the deck for years because it is a pretty good 2-drop, right? Like it gets you through the cards you don't want. It does a decent amount of damage. And more importantly, it kind of like gives all your future creatures haste in the sense that they can impact the board immediately by crewing up the copter. And if they remove the copter, well, then they're not removing your Merfolk, right? That's the
Mhm.
idea. So Kumina, one of the few, like, there's only a couple of cards in this Pioneer Merfolk deck that actually care about Merfolk. Kumina is one of them. It's very powerful set of abilities. And here it kind of does the pseudo haste thing and it crews the copter, which has to eat the fatal push.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you're talking about. We saw this happen quite a bit across the board of Magic. Kind of one of the Magic fundamentals is the ability to present 2 threats in one turn, and plots a way to do that. Vehicles are a way to do that. Kind of doing it on suspend. As we get a look at Kumena, the leftover
It can give Kumina can get very
but
powerful.
a little bit of a combo alongside Deep Root Pilgrimage. You can kind of get a bunch of tokens going there. And, you know, I think even if you have any of the Untapper guy, it's like Kiora's Follower. Don't see any Kiora's Followers here, but you used to be able to do, like, with Kiora's Followers, you can actually make infinite. With Kumina, it's just a good synergy alongside Deep Root Pilgrimage, which you do see in hand as we're getting duressed.
He's a lot closer than you might think, too, because Mutavault counts, too, right? So if Kumina sticks around here, you're able to play a creature, activate the Mutavault. You can activate Kumina, and the card advantage does get going. Like, and this is kind of the matchup where you want that card advantage, especially if you're not under the threat of being transmogrified here. So looks like Nikachu's thinking about, do we want to go? The problem is, if you don't have landed hand, you can't play your 3-drop and activate Mutavault. So he's thinking about whether or not to go for the Pilgrimage and fire up the Mutavault and attack with 2 creatures to try to guarantee a trigger out of it. But of course, that means you're not casting your 3-drop and trying to activate Kumina. But it does look like that's what he's landed on.
Yeah, so yeah, we started on Deep Root Pilgrimage, and this is, you could argue, like, potentially baits, you know, obviously waiting to go for the throw at the Kumina until we've committed the mana to do Deep Root Pilgrimage is like part of the equation. But like you just said,
this is good.
Mutavault counts. So yeah, we get to make some more creatures. We get to still push damage with Mutavault. We get to make a Merfolk because, again, Deep Root Pilgrimage just cares about a non-token Merfolk. Doesn't care if it's a land or not. So Mutavault definitely counts. And so, you know, even though the go for the throat, you know, is not the ideal, if you're a Nikachu fan, I mean, this wasn't a bad turn, and with no creatures already in play for any kind of transmogrify, I don't even know if we have a 4th land. So Charlie's hand hasn't really come together like we saw it come together against Zoe. We do have 4th land, but it comes in tapped.
Yeah, this is the window, though. This is the window if you're Nikachu, because you're untapping with a Mutavault up, with a Pilgrimage up. Your opponent is tapped out. They only have 1 creature in play. I guess they have the Bank Buster, but this gives you a bit of a window. Now, this is definitely where you miss your modern Merfolk, right? There's no Merfolk Tricksters or anything like that here. This deck is much more kind of just play my creatures aggressively, attack with them, trigger my stuff, and try to go wide. Kumina, one of the fewer ways to kind of get tricky with the deck. So not an easy spot here for Nikachu. Also, there's, you know, no spell unit that you might be used to seeing for card advantage. So now the 3-drop he does have there that can make map tokens, and that does give you some form of advantage over a long game, especially since the tokens off the Deep Root Pilgrimage have hexproof. But it is all kind of a little unimpressive in the face of what's going on from Charlie's side right now.
Yeah, and we do see the Sentinel, the Nameless City, deploy. Nikachu, like you mentioned, this is a critical turn. Did give it a lot of thought. Chooses to land on the revealed card from the duress, the Sentinel, the Nameless City. That one's going to make a map token on entering. Going to look at that rare from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. 3/4 Vigilance, actually pretty good against opposing aggressive strategies. Can attack, can block. Great cube card. I've cubed a lot with this one, but obviously a Merfolk as well. So very powerful, can grow very big very quickly, and makes map tokens coming into the battlefield, a little extra value there. And of course, when it attacks as well. But again, doesn't actually end up tapped, which is a little awkward with your Deep Root Pilgrimage. So like, you don't tap to attack with it, and that's like a non-token creature, and so you don't get a token for just attacking like you do with like Vault and things like that. But you know, obviously Vigilance still a powerful keyword. As we do go ahead and crack the map token right away, send out Scout to the bin, and I think the counter went on the Merfolk token, so went ahead and attacked there.
That's
it's a blue die. That's why my eyes just like were.
Yeah, no. Well, there's also that's he Ben Kumina's speaker. It plays that and Senate Scout, right? So there's like a full suite of 8 1-drops in the deck that are green. Very like it's a very aggressive build of the deck. So the 3/4 the Sentinel is pretty nice here, though, right? Like it's a decent blocker. The map token gives you a little bit of value. I don't know. I guess it really depends on what Charlie has in hand. Charlie has a full grip, though, and in fact is going to had a trigger off of the Fable here. So you have to imagine Charlie is sitting on everything that he needs to kind of slam the door shut here. But let's see.
Notable attack, just attacked right into the Sentinel. Yeah, it has to mean something's a follow-up. Now, whether you just want the treasure for more secure transmogrify, or if you have some follow-up damage alongside Torch the Tower, you know, either way, I believe that is exiled, but I don't know if that matters.
Okay, this is all. I mean, this isn't. Is this the transmogrified? No, just Ob Nixilis.
Yeah, Ob Nix. You know, Ob Nixilis Not a 0 here, of course, gives you a blocker, but honestly, less impressive than I expected. I mean,
Yeah,
for getting to untap with Chapter 2 of Fable the Mirror Breaker, I mean,
yeah.
really did a lot, I think, to unlock what Charlie's hand had going on. And Omnix is a fine follow-up, but we don't get to Casualty or anything like that. You can look at the 3-mana Planeswalker from New Capenna. It's a mythic. People were excited about this one upon release. Haven't seen it do a lot, but have seen actually quite a bit of it in main decks and sideboards and Pioneer now. Maybe kind of late to the party, but finally showing up and making a big impact in this Pioneer format. Ability to make devils, gain life, making non-token creatures, of course, matters for your Transmogrifies. But I mean, it has a lot of other Texas matchups
Yeah.
in the matchups in Pioneer as well. Excuse me.
Yeah, no, it's seen a big jump as well. It lines up against things like in Modern, even also at Pride, where you just those devil tokens are actually sometimes very good.
Mhm.
But in Pioneer, it kind of does the same thing. It just really, in addition to the value you mentioned, but just putting the wall, it just grinds the game out, right? And I actually think Charlie, at least as it's looking now, I mean, there's another Kumina and Nikachu's hand here, and that could get some card advantage going, which would
Oh,
be
we have a
huge as
second
second
deep root
pilgrimage.
here. Ooh.
I would say I think Charlie is gonna, if he wins this game, is gonna be able to do it just playing fairly, right? Just drawing cards off a Bankbuster, activating a Planeswalker, getting value a chapter at a time off the Fable. It might be good enough. That said, double deep root pilgrimage. This Kumina comes down next turn, and immediately Nikachu, because remember those are hexproof, will be able to draw cards.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big deal. And obviously, also just having hexproof big for all the spot removal that's available. We do get a flipped reflection of Kiki Jiki here, but I mean, cleaned up everything there. Cleaned up the devil token, cleaned up
Yeah,
Obnixilis. I mean, a great attack for Nikachu. And, these redundant enchantments, fine in multiples. You still have a reasonable attack force. And Charlie's life total is dwindling. I mean, really under a lot of pressure to find a Transmogrify as quickly as possible.
he needs
Plenty
it
of
now.
targets here. Yeah. We'll see.
He'd slam it if he has it, right? So that means maybe not. Then again, we are. Here comes a 3-mana tap.
Oh,
Wow.
buy Giganta is not what you want to see if you're a Charlie fan. Really just looking for that Transmogrify in order to get an Attraction play. I mean, it would be such a big level up. But now, I mean, I really think that was the turn he had to do it. Because
Yeah,
now
this
this
is
turn, Jonathan
yeah.
has Kumena, and that could start to slip away very quickly.
Yeah, and remember, we're talking about the tap 3 Merfolk draw card with Kumina. That's the one the most commonly activated. It's tap 5 Merfolk, put a counter on all your Merfolk. So
Sure. Yeah.
if there was, say, a land and another 1-drop here, okay, we're going to unable to scream. So it is not going to be anything quite like that. Opting to just have to answer and stay aggressive. So you turn off the reflection, attack for 4.
And
What's
this
the
is interesting
follow
too,
up?
because
Okay.
I don't know how much of a threat that was, but it does prevent you from losing any of the merfolk you already had in play. As Torch is gonna not a lot of targets for that one with all the hexproof merfolk. That one is going to take care of Kumena Speaker.
To preempt anybody wondering, Deep Root Pilgrimage does trigger off of non-token Merfolk attacking.
Mm-hmm. That actually messed me up a bunch of times. I thought for a long time that like Deeper Pilgrimage plus Kumena was just instantly infinite, and that's just not true, obviously. And I was like, okay, well, at least they had the sense to have that as a stopgap. But then it's still infinite with Kiora's followers and stuff. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, now it's just blowing my mind. I can't handle this.
It's very, very powerful in the right deck. But this is, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't even say I know who's advantaged right here, right? Like, this has been a great game.
I mean, it all comes down, I think, to whether or not Charlie does find a Transmogrify. I mean, that's really what he's looking for this whole time. I
Well,
mean,
here's a big tap.
it's Giganta.
Hey, oh
The
man.
Giganta we picked up last turn. Yeah, that ain't it. I mean, it is a
Well,
good blocker.
man,
That's
Nikachu just every turn it looks like on taps.
true.
Oh, I get another turn. I get another turn. And here
Yeah,
we go.
Kumena's
Kumina
in
hits the
play.
board.
No
Kumina, by the way,
removal
can
up.
also make itself unblockable.
Yeah, I think we're just going to start drawing cards right away. Make another token here. The 1/1s don't attack great into the 5/5 Giganthus. Let's just go ahead and start cashing that out. And now we got 2 more tokens, and I think we can just activate it again. So we really have a great source of card advantage running here.
This is huge.
Can
Yeah.
we find a land? You can play some spells. I mean,
Well, I think that's what he was hoping
stuck
for,
on
right?
3.
If he hit it to land there and has a follow-up, it's really going to get silly. If he had, another non-token Merfolk to start tapping.
It doesn't even find
Here
a
we
land. I
go.
mean,
He
that's pretty
doesn't.
good, right? If you could choose to stop at 3 or 4 lands, I was 4 lands, right? Because we lost the Mutavault. If you could choose to stop at 4 lands in your Civic Merfolk deck, I think you would. I mean, this has been a great draw, I'd say,
And he still gets
Pikachu.
the draw on the end step, right? This just means
Yeah.
you get to keep up your blockers as well. And if it's a transmogrify, you're in trouble. And if not, you're probably just winning the board at this point. And I mean, you get to draw cards. So now finding another copy, like there's 4 Unable to Screams in the deck. This is the exact situation where maybe even a transmogrify at this point for Atraxa, Nikachu could just go around.
Yeah, I mean, it is getting to that point. We start activating, Kumena, that's unblockable. And with Charlie's life total being so low, already at 6, you can start to go wide, you can start to go around. Unable to scream might start to be good enough. I mean, really, I think he needed it like a turn or two ago. But even now, because of how things have played out, and kind of Nikachu taking like a pivot thanks to Gigantha in order to just draw cards and stuff like that, it might still be good enough this turn, but the window is closing.
Yeah, the other issue here, right, is that Flood Pitch Drowner is a 4 of a Nikachu's deck, which if you're not familiar with Flood Pitch Drowner, it's actually flew under the radar from Duskmourn, but it is a Merfolk, and it flashes in to tap things down and put stun counters on them. So it's a pretty clean answer to buying you that turn against Atraxa, and in fact, it buys you 2 turns against an Atraxa attack. There's also the Vidalian Hexcatcher with Flash to consider that could pump all of those tokens to turn an attack that doesn't look lethal into lethal. And that's so basically, I guess all of that is to say, if you're Charlie right now, there's a ton of scary draws that are coming off the top of Nikachu's deck.
Yeah. I mean, that's I think that's the case for both players. Like it's about what's on the board right now and what the draw steps look like. As we do go ahead and cut back to Nikachu drawing on end step as we expected.
Okay, so Charlie was able to deploy a handful of blocks.
All right. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and draw for turn. So a bunch of pickups. I still don't see a land, which, I mean, could be good, could be bad, depending on what the spells specifically are. All right. Can we assemble a kill? The board is a mess.
There is a Hexcatcher in hand, so that's +1 to every Merfolk.
That's big. Yeah, that's big.
It can also come into play, tap to make Kumena unblockable, which guarantees that you're getting in 3 damage.
Yeah. And then so we got Pilot, Gigantha, Unable to Scream, Reflection. Those are the 3 blockers. So we have 3 blockers.
Okay.
Kumena is just going to be laying the beatdowns of the 1/1s, which to me signals that we don't have a kill this turn. But again, we don't really need the kill this turn, right?
Right. So this is unblockable Kumena, just poking you down. Keeping
and
up.
Now we have so many tokens that maybe Hexcatcher just counters a Transmogrify even if you find it.
That's a great point. There's also, that is an excellent point. There's a lot of options available right now.
Yeah, I think the window's closed for Charlie. I mean, to his credit, he's done a ton of digging with these bank busters. He's done a good job putting up a wall of defense where really, even with all this stuff in play, the Kumena is the only thing attacking. As here does come, I believe, what is that? It's just a backwards token. I don't know what kind of token it is. It didn't make a treasure, so it's not a Fable token.
It's off of the
case. It's
right?
from the okay, it's from the case. Yeah, it's the skeleton. Jeez, so many tokens here. What are we doing?
There's a lot going on in this match.
2/1. Yeah, it's has menace as well. So that's really why you don't really want to block that one too much. Your 1/1s are worth a lot more than that. Yeah, get a look at the rare Murders at Karlov Manor. That set had stuff other than Surveillance in it, I promise. Case of the Stash Skeleton. Makes a 2/1. It's a suspect. And it has a menace and can't block.
So here we go. Post-combat removal spell on Kumena. And you called it.
Oh, Hexcatcher time.
He's going to be able to draw at least 2 cards. Might actually just opt to put counters on all of the Merfolk. Because there are 5
I think we're just starting with making
Kumena
unblockable. So we're getting 2 more tokens, and now we're going to start hex catching, it looks like. I believe Charlie has seen enough. He understands now that Transmogrify is not even good enough. These 1/1s are going to be far more than enough to beat him. And at 4 life, I mean, your spell gets countered and then no spells resolve for the rest of the game. So Deep Root Pilgrimage alongside Valdelian Hexcatcher Kumena, good enough to defeat Rakdos Transmogrify in game 1. Shocking. Pilgrimage. I mean, there's so much spot removal, and you really
Pilgrimage was huge, right? Like Pilgrimage just carried that game.
Yeah, Kumena, I believe I said Kumano on accident. Anyways, let's take a quick look here at Rakdos Transmogrify in the sideboard that Charlie's looking with. We saw this last round. We're going to see it again here. We got 3 copies of Goblake, 2 Cut Down, 2 Damping Sphere, 2 Path of Peril, 2 Urabrask's Forge, 1 extinction event, the Gigantha, the Wellspring Companion, Obnixilis, the adversary, and Unlicensed Her. So again, a creature matchup. What do you like in this spot?
Well, I think there's 2 cards that seem to matter from game 1, and that was Deeproot Pilgrimage and Kumena. So if you are Charlie, you try not to lose to those cards. Okay, so
okay,
that's everything else you can answer. All the other creatures you can 1-for-1. You can remove. You can play blockers for. You can trade off with your tokens off of your Fable, right? Like everything else you can handle. What you can't handle is a bunch of cards getting drawn off Kumena or a bunch of hexproof tokens getting made off of Deeproot Pilgrimage. So I think you play the game around that. And looking at the sideboard here, obviously you're going to pick up extinction events and cut downs, but there's not a lot else that is going to answer those cards. So that's what it comes down to. You're going to be hoping that a Thoughtseize can catch one of those early. But that's the challenge for Charlie here.
Yeah, definitely. Not a lot of things that answer Deeproot Pilgrimage, but again, the removal very attractive in the creature matchup, unsurprisingly. Let's move over to Nikachu, his take on the Simic Merfolk deck. Again, a deck we've seen already today, but really, seeing him champion this, and he's a big believer in it, believes this to be better than even the modern version. We got 4 copies of Tidebinder Mage, 4 copies of Mystical Dispute, 3 Disdainful Stroke, 2 Tishana's Tidebinder, and 2 Aether Gust. Only 5 different cards in the sideboard. What do you like of them?
I love the color hosing of this, right? Like Tidebinder Mage to hit all of the red and green creatures, Mystical Dispute for the blue decks, Aether Gust for the red and black ones. I guess that's a way to build a sideboard, right? I'm sorry, red or green with Aether Gust. But so I think you probably could consider that here, right? Tidebinders, I also think have a place. Tidebindering, I mean, it's better on the play, right? But Tidebindering an Obnixilis trigger is pretty decent. So you've got some options there. Also, the Tidebinders, it has to be noted, at that point, you're up to 10 flash spells in your deck, thanks to the Drowners and the Hex Catchers, plus the instant speed tricks you get to do with Kumena. And there's an Otawara in the deck as well. So there's a lot of that can kind of go on here if the opposite go in that direction. And when we start talking about it, the Aether Gusts come in as well. So yeah, I think that's a pretty decent. You cut 1-drops. I imagine the scouts, maybe some speakers, things that are just going to run headlong into removal and get a little more interaction here to grind the game out.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I like some of the counters. Well, you mentioned Gust. I kind of like Stroke maybe too, if you care about the Transmogrify stuff, or if you're a little worried about Extinction Event. But Tishana's Tidebinder actually might be a sleeper. Also gets Atraxa. It's like one of the only good cards against Atraxa. Stops the trigger, then you strip Lifelink off it. That's appealing. So maybe one of the few cards in your deck that can actually hang with Atraxa, and obviously gives this Merfolk deck a little bit more power to win the game post Atraxa that we didn't really see from any of the red aggressive decks that we've seen Charlie play with against as well. So I think this Merfolk deck is a lot scarier if you're a fan of Charlie and his Rakdos deck.
Yeah, we were talking about it before the round, and obviously Nikachu is going to play Merfolk if he can, but it's not just Nikachu crushing with this deck because Nikachu crushes with Merfolk. Like, there's actually a lot more going on beneath the hood here than it looks like.
Yeah, the blue aggro decks. I mean, we've seen a bunch of different takes on various Mockingbird style. Like, what are we doing? Ninjas. That's something that's fighting, and I think it's on our backup match right now.
Right.
There's a lot of different takes of how can we make an aggressive deck with counter spells, which is kind of one of the classic ways to beat sweepers, one of the best cards against you, and make that work. And for Nikachu, the answer is obviously going to be Merfolk, but I mean, there is a real metagame kind of consideration for playing a blue aggressive deck, which might just be the perfect time for Merfolk. I mean, this might be his time.
It's always the perfect time for Merfolk.
I mean, well, he believes it's always his time. I don't know that I agree, but based on what I've seen here today, I mean, I really do think that Merfolk actually was not. I mean, people like to laugh at Merfolk, and I think that's part of where you get this. I'll say cult following for Merfolk. I mean, Nikachu certainly, maybe I don't want to accuse him of being a cult leader or anything like that, but the temperature feels similar. Merfolk has its people, and its people are about it. And, I think as a result, you have a strict polarization the other way, where some people just hate Merfolk.
I'm just saying that every night in the Merfolk Discord, you can find a group of us helping each other pilot.
Oh, us! I'm in the booth with a Merfolk cult.
Oh, I'm sorry if you didn't know this. My first ever SCG top 8 many years ago was off the back of someone handing me Legacy Merfolk. I ended up splitting the finals of the tournament, and It's been my thing ever since. I've got it foiled out in every format.
Foiled out.
I did the whole thing. I committed to the bit. I got the full art mutavaults and the whole bit. It's beautiful.
What?
It's beautiful. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh
So
my
look,
God.
there's literally tens of us,
Oh.
and we all support Nikachu crushing this tournament right now. That's all.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, okay. I guess I need to adjust my rhetoric. I was not, I didn't get a right read on.
Look, I try to
here.
be really realistic about it though, and a lot of people, it traditionally is seen as a budget deck, right? So I think where a lot of the reasons people underestimate it is it tends to be played by people who may not have 10,000 modern games in them.
Sure. I mean, the deck is deep. The gameplay is deep, and like I said, and there's spots for it where if some of the best decks ways of beating you are one for wanting, and then some expensive sweepers. I mean, just having blue for counter spells and really leading on the Merfolk's energies can be good enough. And Nikachu here playing a win and end 5-1. Both these players 5-1. I believe this is, like I said, clean win and end, lose and out. So with Nikachu up a game, gotta like his spot on the draw here on a mulligan. So not as good as game one. Charlie gonna need to be better at finding the transmogrifies. Tried his best. Fable, Ranker Becca Buster in game one, not good enough to get there. Tapped Haunted Ridge on turn one for him. Not too surprising to see. Not a lot of ones you're gonna want to play. As here is a Kumena Speaker on turn one for Nikachu.
It looks like a nice curve out here for Nikachu. Drew that breeding pool on the first turn, which of course gets your speaker going immediately. And I think he's going to have a good follow-up here, right? So the issue, of course, is that the speaker is very likely to get removed. So something like Deep Root Pilgrimage on turn two, which is one of your most snowbally starts possible, is probably not going to work out. So as a result, he actually does move to combat, gets in there for 2, and as a result, it turns into the expected cut down.
This is actually, I think, a fine exchange for Nikachu, though, right? Like, cut down is going to gun down the 1-drop, but now, I mean, if anything,
those cards don't matter.
Follow up, anything you plays a follow up can't get gunned down, and actually, really interesting there too. Deeper Pilgrimage, the follow up,
like I said,
post combat, I think that's really interesting. As Fable going to be deployed, I mean, a fine curve out here, I guess, for Charlie, if you can call it that. Cut down on turn 2 into Fable. I mean, having Fable on 3 does so much to glue together some of these. Not even anemic, but just the wrong mix kind of starts. Really fixes your mana, fixes your hand, and that's why the card's so strong. But Nikachu, I mean, Deeper Pilgrimage did a lot of work last game.
This is exact as you expect to play out, and this is why I talked about during the sideboarding, right? It's about who can grind out the match here. It's like why in Modern Merfolk boards out its Ether Vials against Jund, because it's just a dead card. So the Kumena Speaker here, it's going to eat the cut down. Your opponent has to cut down it, but you don't really care because that's not the cards that are going to matter in the matchup. The card advantage cards are going to matter, and that's why Deep Root Pilgrimage landing and sticking around here is a window. And if you don't get transmogrified here immediately, it's going to give you a chance to get into the game. And of course, the fact that you might get to untap with your treasure maker, or I'm sorry, with your map maker, is even better.
Well, here comes Fatal Push with Revolt thanks to the treasure. So we got to attack, then before blocks, crack the treasure for get that Revolt for Fatal Push and transmogrify the follow-up. This is exactly
he's just got it all.
Thumbs up from Nikachu. I mean, I guess if there's a game for it to go wrong, this is one of them. Nikachu's hand maybe a little bit anemic, and a perfect start here from Charlie. A turn 4 transmogrify after using the Fable token to do some removal too. So we got to do it all. Transmogrify, get a look at that one.
Perfect draw, Charlie.
Transmogrify? Am I saying this wrong? Whatever.
It is in fact transmogrify.
All right, whatever. I'm sorry. Transmogrify. I'll pronounce things right. Actually, never. Don't count on me.
It's Magic is full of words that are hard to pronounce, and sometimes you learn that a word is pronounced a certain way. Like for instance, Eidolon. For instance, Eidolon of Rhetoric. And then you just all agree that we're not going to say it that way.
Anyway, 0% chance. Look, I'm from Alabama. I get an excuse. Come on. The Alabama education system wasn't kind to me, all right?
I'm in Oklahoma. We can just go full Southern States commentary here. It'd be the words would be pronounced differently, I'll tell you that.
It'd just be nobody know what we're saying. Just like full lean into it. At least, whatever. At least we don't have that Bayou accent, the Ed Ogerons, all that stuff. Just like utter nonsense. Whatever. We're separating cards for Traxa here. I mean, again, this game feels really over, but I mean, honestly, Merfolk is one of the decks that I'd say is the best of the aggro deck suite that you could even imagine at beating a Resolve Atraxa. I don't know if Nick has the tools to do that this game.
No, he's not going to pick this one up. Not with another one going to hand for Charlie here. But you could imagine if he had more creatures he'd been on the play, and then you throw an Unable to Scream on the Atraxa, that maybe you keep playing. In this case, it's just going to be too little, too late. Like the first game would have gone this way too if Charlie had found his deck's namesake card. So that's why you play deck and then just go over the top of pretty much anything. And that's the appeal to any deck, any package that includes Atraxa.
And there's a Tidebinder in Jonathon's hand. Now, it wouldn't have been good enough because obviously the Fable token plus the Fatal Push would have kind of taken care of it. So Atraxa would have had text, but it is so brutal too to like be facing down an Atraxa trigger that resolved with a Tidebinder in hand. That is tough. Yeah, he's done. He played his land. He's like, all right, this thing has all that words on it. All right, I'm good. And I do not blame Nikachu one bit. So a completely different game from what we saw in game number 1. And that buys us to game number 3 of this win it in. Nikachu on the play. He's got a lot going for him heading into game number 3. Knows what's up now. Has seen the full combo at the fastest speed it can go. And so can make some adjustments here. It looks like he will. So let's take a look at the sideboard one more time as these players heading into the final game of their win it in. Again, we saw the Tidebinders. We had we saw they're both Tidebinders, right?
Yeah, it's horrible.
Mage,
it's horrible.
Tishana's Tidebinder. Wow, that's horrible. Yeah, that's awful. I hate that so much. All right, we saw the Tishana's Tidebinder. We saw one of those in hand for Nikachu already, so we sniffed that out. Is it time to pick up more counter magic now that you've seen the Transmogrify combo in action happening as quick as turn 4? I mean, you can't really kill that quick, right?
Well, you certainly not in this deck, not playing Deep Root Pilgrimages on 2. I would assume that there is counter magic there, and it was just not seen. Remember, that was a mulligan from Nikachu, and he kept 1 drop into Pilgrimage. That pretty much you just pressed into keeping that hand, right? And it works out that your bad hand may be lined up against their good hand, because that was a showcase of what the Transmogrify deck can do, because that was not just turn 4 Transmogrify. That was like a removal spell into that. So that was extremely powerful. So obviously now we flop things back around, and Nikachu gets to go on the play. And that means if you just find a hand with counter magic or even Tidebinder, perhaps, then you can keep that and have some initiative because you get to go first. It just completely changes the way that your spells line up. And that's going to be how he hopes that it goes here, because that he just was missing a turn, right? He had the early start. He had the long-term advantage. He just didn't have the interaction on the turn he needed it because he was 1 turn.
Yeah, I think that's really the only spot we're going to see really any kind of heavy changes is first. Some of what you're talking about, I mean, I agree with you. I think Nikachu did sniff out a lot of what's going on there. He's probably already aware of kind of what's going on. Maybe some more counter magic, maybe not. We'll see. But as far as Charlie Dusterberg goes, we saw all the removal really be involved in game number 2. The cutdowns a part of the mixture as well. That's from the sideboard. And I don't think he's looking to make any changes, whereas we did see Nikachu make changes. And now turn 1 land, turn 2 Mutavault. No creatures in play on turn 2, but we're going to choose to play Bank Buster instead.
We got a flash creature from Nikachu here, so he should spend the mana.
Flood Pitch Drowner among the options. Yeah, so that's going to resolve. I think we have a Hex Catcher too.
Oh, Hex Catcher. Oh, so we actually was debating Hex Catcher countering the Bank Buster there.
Yeah, because it's non-creature, right? You can actually tag it. Yeah.
Yes. I think I like letting it resolve there, but
I do too. Yeah, I think Hex Catcher is actually secretly actually your best card in the matchup, because it catches the early game, the early Transmogrifies, and that's a really big deal. And obviously, it's just a Lord as well to pump up.
And if Charlie has a bunch of mana to dump into Bank Buster, you're probably in trouble anyway.
Oh, does this thing have Vigilance too? Does our entire deck just have Vigilance, and then we're also playing Deeper Pilgrimage? That is so awkward. Yeah, take a look at this uncommon from Duskborn.
Well, you can tap it to shuffle away if you want to.
Oh, sure, you can.
I'm telling you, it's just a bizarre card that happens to fit into the deck. Yeah.
It's like an upgrade over the Harbinger of the Tides, I guess.
I actually spent years on a campaign to Wizards telling them that Curse Catcher was the worst Curse Catcher, and they let me preview Vidalian Hex Catcher as a result.
Is that real? Are you actually, are you
100%?
That is, you understand that's kind of psychotic, right?
It really made me mad that Curse Catcher was the worst Curse Catcher, and it made me really happy that I got a preview Vidalian Hex Catcher. I made a video with the history of Merfolk and everything for it. It was amazing.
I don't know how I didn't know all this lore about you. I guess maybe it was before my time. I mean, it's not that I'm blind to Merfolk.
I'm just old, man. I'm just old. That's all.
That's fair. I mean, it's not that I'm a youngster. I'm about to hit the big 3-0. I'm just, ancient, approaching death.
Maybe we should talk about the Magic. It's getting a little dire here.
It is getting kind of gloom, memento mori. Anyways,
it's getting kind of dire for Charlie too, though, right? If you are just passing here, you're facing down actually a fairly substantial attack. I mean, that's 6 damage coming at you.
Yeah, this is a real attack for us. I see some Torch the Towers in hand, so we have some stuff we could do at instant speed. And Jonathon, obviously, very heads up, holding up the Hex Catcher this entire time, not going to let himself get transmogrified on turn 4 again, like we did see in game 2. So, like I said, I mean, here comes Torch the Tower. And now you have to ask yourself, do we flash in Hex Catcher to try to bump it up to save it? Yeah, and it looks like the answer is yes. I'm going to put that one on the table. And yeah, that's going to bite an answer here from Charlie as well. Wonder what we're going to go with this one.
Yeah, so now things get interesting, though, right? Because there's one targeting the original creature. Now there's a Hex Catcher. We would assume the second one's targeting the Hex Catcher. Well, now the Hex Catcher is in play and can sacrifice itself to target, for instance, the torch pointed at the other creature. So Nikachu could, if he wanted, throw away 2 Merfolk here to save 1.
Yeah, I don't think you want to do that because one's already getting saved, right? It's only 2 damage without the bargain. So
the catchers, if the Lord goes away, it'll die.
Oh, right, because you have to pay. Oh, this is weird.
So I would suspect that the catcher is going to end up sacrificing here to try to counter the first torch, which would then invite Charlie to pay the mana, and then Nikachu has to make a choice.
What if you valued the Hex Catcher higher than that? What if you sacked 2 Merfolk to save the catcher?
Interesting. If you give up on some damage this turn,
I really think the Hex Catcher's good. Like, what if we sack Mutavault and Speaker or whatever?
No, you're right. He could throw away the Mutavault and the Speaker to it. Maybe you throw away the Drowner in case you draw a Pilgrimage.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, whatever. You got other
maybe
stuff.
not, but maybe.
The Hex Catcher's going to be getting busy.
Yeah, you're right, I think.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, so we're sacking Mutavault to try to protect the Hex Catcher. I like this. This is what I want to do, I think.
Because Charlie's very short on mana, right? So you're still going to end up getting through for 3 damage here. You're preserving the Hex Catcher, and Charlie doesn't have a creature to transmogrify, and even if he did, he's nowhere near having the mana to pay through a Hex Catcher. And Nikachu still got 3 cards in hand. So that you're right. This line is, I think, going to work out pretty well for him. And in the sense that, hey, the game still continues. Charlie has the Bank Buster. He can draw cards and keep playing. But that particular exchange, I think, worked out pretty decently for Jonathon.
I think this is part of the trouble with taking the line we took last turn, like protecting the Mutavault, really fighting on that axis instead of just kind of letting yourself die. Exposing the Hex Catcher when that's, I think, like I said, one of your better cards against a fast transmogrify means that's just priority number 1 for Charlie to get off the board. So if you don't have another way to stop transmogrify as the game goes on, I mean, you can only protect the Hex Catcher for so long, and it's face up on the table. So Charlie's not going to accidentally run transmogrify into it or anything, and can spend the time just gunning that down over and over and over again, like we just saw with the go for the throat and such. And if you don't have any backup, now you might be exposed.
Yeah, and it's, I think, 2 lands, 2 spells in hand for Nikachu, one of which is a Sentinel, and one of which is a Kumina, which means you cannot get the 3 Merfolk this turn for Kumina. So maybe you just slam Sentinel here, but you are shields down to anything Charlie gets to do, and Charlie's going to get to draw a card on the end step if he wants.
Yeah, so we do get to use the map token. Again, I think I maybe would have liked this pre-combat. But if we're just going to grow this Sentinel, maybe it doesn't matter.
You weren't doing
Hex Catcher number 2. Okay, that's a big one. So Charlie needs it here. This is his window. He wants to punch his ticket in the top 8. You need to transmogrify now. A land plus transmogrify. You can animate Mutavault and then use Mutavault to cast it. And if we have it, that's what we're going to do. If not, that Hex Catcher, I mean, that represents, again, really hard to cast transmogrifies.
I think if he had it, we would have seen it already, unless he's just, going through the full thought process here in his head to make sure he's not missing anything. But it sure looks like he doesn't have it.
I don't love that. That body posture tells me a lot about what's going on over there. Yeah. Missing something. Not sure if it's land 5 or if it's transmogrify or both. Let's see if we can get a look. We have Path to Peril.
A lot of cards. Another Bank Buster.
We have transmogrify. Is the land of Blackleaf Cliffs? Is that the problem here? I think so. I mean, we have
Yeah.
looks like we have everything you'd want, right? You have path,
A
you
lot
have
of
both the throat,
options.
you have another bank buster, you have cards, you have removal, you even have your combo piece.
Now, I
Charlie
think
looks
he might
disturbed.
actually. Now, he doesn't know this, obviously, but I don't think he's dying next turn. Like, I think Charlie is probably going to be okay if he's able to just interact and set up for it for the next turn. Of course, that gives Jonathan several draw steps. I mean, one of the things I'll note about his deck is that there are no Silver Girl Adepts. So none of that
Okay.
just sort of cycled to draw extra cards that Merfolk's leaned on in the past. So I think it's Kumina and maybe just land in hand for Nikachu, and we know Hexcatcher on top. So the Hexcatcher you have to think about here for Transmogrify, but it's not like they're on unlimited resources. If you can work through the creatures in play, maybe you have a shot. But Charlie actually just draws a card, plays the tap land, and passes. So this seems great if you're Jonathan here.
Yeah, it's interesting to let Nikachu draw. Like, obviously, we're representing Go for the Throat, and if you let him draw the Hex Catcher, if you're planning to use it on like the Sentinel anyway because it's big, you're just kind of letting Nikachu dictate what he lets die. That's what happened in the first
Yeah,
Voltalion Hex Catcher exchange too. That's part of the power of
exactly.
Voltalion Hex Catcher.
Yeah.
And maybe we're trying to block. I, I'm not in
Ooh.
love with that.
Okay. This
I
is going to
mean,
be a difficult sequence here.
I
So
mean, you don't need the creature because Bank Buster you can crack next turn and get
yeah,
it all, but
the Hex Catcher is not in play. It is
Mhm.
revealed. That's why it's face up. The Drowner is a 2/1. So even if Nikachu flashes it in, it will be a 3/2 and trade with Immutable.
Okay.
That would allow the Sentinel to get in for an additional point, which puts it down to 5, which is, lethal next turn. But that, of course, commits Nikachu to that line. We don't know what his other two cards in hand are. There's also now going to be a map token floating. So trying to figure out what he wants to do with his mana here, if it's worth exposing the Hex Catcher, for lack of a better term, to get in 1 more points of damage. And it looks like he opts to save it because I think you're onto something. Like, keeping that card in hand means that you get to control how it interacts with Transmogrify. You don't, like, Charlie doesn't get a chance to set it up. So
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of the formula here as well, and part of why Nikachu held it there. And like I said, part of the nice thing about actually blocking Mutavault is that you don't expose, you get to pick what dies, but I mean, even still, I think you're killing the worst thing on the board and in hand between what you know. So, I mean, the Mutavault exchange happens. That reduces some of the pressure. Down to 6 goes Charlie Dusterberg, so really only has like 1 more turn to live. Nikachu getting a read on what happens when the final counters remove. You do get a pilot and a treasure, so that's going to help solve some of the mana problems. I think the draw off the Bankbuster last turn is what found an untapped land. So I think
yeah,
next turn Charlie will have an untapped land, which untapped land plus activate gives you creature plus mana. But I mean, with the Hex Catcher now still face up and unable to be killed, that's not really something that's going to be good enough on its own at the moment. So Charlie's going to have to string together some of the removal spells, and I think continue to tread water for a turn or two before we can even go for the Transmogrify.
it looks like we're getting some rules clarification on exactly how the Bank Buster is going to interact here. Both Seiju avail. I mean, this has really worked out pretty well for Nikachu here, and we don't know exactly what's in his hand. I guess maybe we do. It's a Kumina, but if you're Charlie, you're also staring down the threat of a Vidalian Hexcatcher, right? Or Tidebinder, the 3 Tishana's Tidebinder, the 3-drop.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, just shot his Tidebinder.
Just got to work our way through the Rolodex of Merfolk here.
And yeah,
In my head,
back just Sentinel in play.
At home, I keep all my old defunct Merfolk foils in a drawer. So I was just working my way through the drawer.
Through the progression. Yeah. The drawer of the lost fish.
Tackle box, if you will.
Oh, sure. Why not? The catch of the day. All right. So I assume part of the question was with the Spacesius, since the Spacesius face up, if he activates and the Reckoner Bankbuster is no longer in play, like if you blow it up, I guess in response or something, I don't know, like will you still get the stuff? And I believe the answer is no. I think you do. Yeah. Well, actually, hold on.
I'm not sure of the answer. I am certain that that's what they are asking about, though. So we'll get a clarification either from the judges or based on how they play this game out. But
yeah, I mean, we'll see here in a second. I think it's just going to go ahead and activate. And I assume if you would not get the stuff, then it would be fine. But yeah, I think removing the counter is part of the cost, and I believe removing it will use last known information to resolve the ability. This is my guess. I'm not a judge. My guess is it will use last known information, and you will get the stuff even if you blow it up in response to the draw, because the counter, the last it remembers is the counter's removed as part of the cost. That's my guess. That's
Checks
what I got.
out to me. It seems to be how they resolved it as well. So it sounds pretty good. Which has had the effect of sending Charlie back into the tank here, right? So he knows he's staring down a Lord. He knows he's staring down not just, I mean, we've been talking about all of this in the context of whether or not he's going to be able to resolve Transmogrify. The Sentinel's just big, right? Like it's a 3/4 naturally.
Yeah, Litho's under pressure.
It's a 4/5. The Hexcatcher makes it a 5/6. Like one more Lord just makes it lethal at that point. So there's a lot to consider here. Another map token if it came from a second Sentinel, things like that. There's a lot of ways. If you're Charlie, you have to consider actually just losing the game next turn, and that makes things more difficult. So here we go. We're going to
animate the Bank Buster while it's tapped. This makes sense if you want to try to transmogrify it, but that runs into the face-up Beseiju. So now I'm a bit confused. Oh, okay. We're actually casualtying it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Our Obnixilis adversary. That's much better than transmogrifying it. And gonna give you a second Obnixilis, the adversary. So that's nice. That's gonna help the blocking force for
this
sure.
Is a really interesting line from Charlie, and it is going to probably have the effect of one, it plays around the any Hexcatcher shenanigans, right? Because you have a copy on the stack now in addition to that one treasure, but it makes a bunch of blockers. And
yeah, a bunch of blockers is what we need.
Yeah, well, doesn't have and they have the effect if the Lord comes into play and the Devil tokens get a block, they get to ping down the Lord after that. So it makes the Hexcatcher itself a little bit awkward. So, and we know if the rest of Nikachu's hand is just that Kumena, the window could still be opening for Charlie to resolve Transmogrify.
Is there any way we're interested in countering any number? I guess there's a treasure, so you can already start paying. Yeah, it's no good.
Yeah, that's the problem is you can't actually, and you only you have access to very few merfolk overall at this point.
And the first one can make a devil. The second one can actually gain some life using the plus ability. That could matter as well. You might want to split the difference, make one devil and do some life gaining here.
And it looks like that's what's happening.
Yeah, I like that. I like that quite a bit. Because add your life total and get a good blocker. Yeah, this is gonna. Oh no, it's two devils. Okay, so it is two devils. That's fine. I mean, either way, I think it's a good spot. You know, obviously, you want to make sure you have a blocker for Sentinel, even in the face of additional drowners and stuff like that. So part of the equation is just having
big draw here for Nikachu. He hits a land. So I don't know if it's interesting. He may have actually been fine with playing the Boseiju now, but he has 6 lands, which doesn't really do much. I guess you can go Kumena and Hexcatcher and get to draw a card since the Sentinel has Vigilance. So, okay.
All right. Attack, block with a devil. I mean, you got to work through the blockers, right? Like these Obnixilises can't do this every turn. You still have the Hexcatcher that is helping check the Transmogrify, but not for much longer. You don't have enough Merfolk without Deeproot Pilgrimage to really work through it. But Kumena does represent some unblockable power if Atraxa just happens. So we might even be able to play on after Atraxa, by doing things like growing the Kumena here. And finding Cavernous Soul is not really what you wanted to do.
Well, it does mean that he gets to keep Boseiju. Well, I guess the other card's a breeding pool, right? So all he really did was save himself 2 life.
And an unknown. I mean, the unknown matters.
Yeah, well, yeah, and now you that's true. And now also you obviously have a new draw step next turn, right? So this is a big spot here, right? Because Charlie's got a lot of Planeswalker triggers.
Game, yeah.
But
2 Planeswalkers versus some Merfolks.
For the first time this entire match, Nikachu has an engine. He's going to be able to play the Hexcatcher with 3 untapped Merfolk in play, tap them to draw a card with Kumena, and that's going to be the first opportunity he's had in this entire game to set up an engine. So he is behind, right? Like if Charlie just goes for a Transmogrify here, like it's pretty bad for Nikachu.
Yeah, I mean, how many Merfolk are you willing to sacrifice?
You're going to have to throw them all away.
Yeah, it's here. Yeah, we are trying Transmogrify on the pilot. So if we flash in Hexcatcher, we have to use all of them. Now,
Yeah, I
obviously, we
think,
can flash in Hexcatcher and do a draw first, but we're out of mana at that point.
and then you're just actually going to get ground down by the Devils and the Obnixilis.
Whereas on the other side of the equation, if we still have all of our Flood Pit Drowners, maybe we can tap down the Atraxa, put a stun counter on it, and
Well,
that opens everything else up.
that is, gosh, that's not where you want to be, but it may be where you're at, because at least at that point you have a Kumena engine, and that's
Yeah, you have Kumena that can be unblockable. If you can get the Atraxa down, you can keep beating down. So, I mean, here's the Atraxa.
He's at 7.
We did let this happen. Yeah, I mean,
he's at 7.
We might be able to beat this. This isn't over.
Flood Pit. So if there's 3 Flood Pit Drowners left in the deck, you're gonna get 3 more draws at him? Not bad.
Yeah, it's a lot of looks.
Unable to scream also in the deck.
Gaining life still, so that's a problem.
Well, there's unable to scream also in the deck. So like,
true.
I guess there's.
I don't know how good.
It depends. I mean, this is of course we come back to what we always come back to, is that Attraction just refills your hand and you're ready to do it again next turn. But you have some outs if you're sitting in Nikachu's seat.
Get a look here at what we are going to find. The second Atraxa among the mix. Yeah, I mean,
wow,
3 Fatals. Okay, I guess we're taking one of those. Take Fatal Push is the only remove. No, we do have the Path to Peril too.
Well, Fatal Push is actually huge. Well, is there Revolt?
Yeah, we have Revolt. We Transmogrified. That exiles something.
Yes. So like, this is actually kind of, I don't know, like this. I mean,
you're running into Hexcatcher if you do it though, because
the problem is that.
Oh no, the
problem is that Nikachu can't Hexcatcher.
And we still have a land drop.
If Nikachu goes for the Hexcatcher now, Charlie gets to remove Kumena in response, and Nikachu doesn't get to draw any cards, and that engine we talked about just isn't there. So he may be forced into just doing something else entirely, which is not what he wants either.
A sigh of relief from Charlie. I think Charlie knows that he's.
Yeah, I think if anything, Nikachu was supposed to flash out the Hexcatcher there so you could draw. But okay, he's gonna.
Okay, Fatal Push main phase and holding the Hexcatcher back. Okay.
I'm not sure what we're missing there.
Yeah, we could have flashed in a draw card. Maybe you just value it too highly, like you're running it into pat. I don't really know.
I'm not sure what
comes down.
Here comes.
Coming on instep is the Hexcatcher. Needs to be a great draw here. Has flooded out. It's another Kumena, I think. Gives you another look at things. 3 caverns. It's very uncounterable, is this Kumena. All right, now I think finding Flood Pit Drowner.
Well, it's rough. If he had drawn an extra card last turn, he could have had that Kumena in hand here and hit whatever he just hit.
I mean, it has to be something. He's excited about it. And, not a lot of exciting hits to find here. And over to Charlie to go. Now, if it is Drowner, it does have Flash, so we can wait on it a little bit. But
I don't think there's any 4 drops in the deck, so I don't think he could have hit anything that he can't play.
Yeah, definitely not.
I mean, guess Ottawa.
Excited. He didn't pick his cards up. He seemed excited about the draw.
He has a legendary creature, so he could Ottawa as well.
What is it?
Oh, it is Ottawa!
Oh, that's a nice one. And we have a legend in place, so that's discounted by 1 thanks to Kumena. So Kumena into Ottawa. That keeps us playing. Into the tank goes Charlie.
Well, gosh, it really does make you wonder about that missed draw, because could have had this exact same line, but been +1 cards right now. Might have been big. Okay, it does
goes Atraxa, so we play on. I mean, we know Charlie's hand's good, but Atraxa is really the lights out card, and now, I mean, there's still a game to be played. Nikachu's life total very high, and Charlie's, even with the life gain from Obnixilis, is not that high.
Oh no! All of a sudden, this game looks incredibly different with that Ottawa coming off the top there. I think Nikachu might have been in I guess it's probably over kind of, resignation there, but you saw his reaction when he ripped that Ottawa off the top. Well, wait a minute, I have a chance.
Not a lot of Hollywood there. It's all I found a good one, and he sure did. Ottawa, an awesome one here. Is another Devil going to enter, and I believe a plus to gain 2 more points of life, 2 blockers, 2 more life, up to 11 is Charlie Dusterberg. As these NRG Championship qualified players battling it out here in Game 3 for their spot in the top 8 of this Pioneer Showdown. Is another Fable of the Mirror Breaker is going to join the mix.
Yeah, that's not Transmogrify.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, well, I think, is the other Atraxa in hand? I guess you could choose not to take it from Atraxa, so maybe it's on the bottom or whatever. Oh, and we're on turns? Is this time? I see a die there. This might actually just be time of the round.
Okay, well, if this is turn 1, Nikachu gets 3 turns, including this one. If he's winning the game, it's probably in that time frame, to be fair. Kind of brutal for Charlie, though. Well, let's think it through here. Nikachu is got a 3-power Kumena. You can make unblockable. He's got a 4 or 5-power Vigilance attacker. That's just obviously going to run into the attacks. If he attacks with that and the Devils get in the way, they can ping down the Hex Catcher.
That's not good. Yeah, I think letting Charlie block is pretty bad here. I do like Kumena. Actually, I like Kumena attacking down Obnixiluses. I think those need to go. You can't, like, racing those is much harder than just taking them out. So I would like to see.
I don't know if he's going to be able to do this in time, but you're right.
I think that's what is going to happen. Is even if Nikachu sets himself up to win this one, I think he's going to run out of time.
I think so too.
And yeah, we're going to draw a card here to kick things off. I don't know what it would need to be. 2 lands is not the formula. That is not the Krabby Patty secret formula at all. And back on over to Charlie we go. This might just be play to a draw territory. 2 lands is so brutal, having already flooded out so hard.
Yeah, this one would have been interesting, I think, with a little more time and a little less confusion at the end, right? In terms of what's actually going to happen, because it's really not clear where this one was going to go.
Yeah, this has been a battle. I mean, really, 2 very talented players piloting very different decks. But again, like I said, NRG mainstays through the 2024 year. It's they're not going down easy. Neither of them are. This multiple points of time, this game felt really bad for both sides, like one side and the other. The swings have been immense. And I mean, it's kind of brutal not really being able to see this one kind of come to a natural conclusion. But that's where I'm feeling things are going. Charlie's gonna get a look, and I believe it's 2 lands. Island and
no collected companies in Nikachu's deck. We didn't talk about this.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's relevant, but like you'd think, like if you're Charlie and you're in a spot like this, okay, what could I lose to? Is like, okay, well, he's got all this mana open. Casting collected company and putting 2 Merfolk into play could be disastrous. But opting for the more aggressive build of the deck here, Nikachu doesn't actually have any in the list.
And here comes Transmogrify number 2, going to find Atraxa number 2. We do know one of them is in hand thanks to Otawara. It happened early in this game and kept Nikachu in this one. But here on turn 2 of turns, we're going to put another Atraxa in play. Is this game, I mean, outside of whether or not Atraxa gets to stay in play, any kind of flood pit grounders or anything like that, is this game winnable in time? Can Charlie actually close this?
Well, if Atraxa's in play, what do you get? 2 life drain with the obs, which got to stick around and play. So what are you talking? We're talking 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, maybe. I don't know. We'll have to see.
A little short to me.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
We found the fables again. Found all three of the other fables.
Wild. Okay. I'm not sure if he can close it out, especially, Nikachu gets 2 more draws, and you can hit all kinds of cards that, turn this game into a draw instead of a win. I don't have any idea. Somebody was asking in chat. I don't have any idea what the tournament math looks like for these players if they do draw.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of players actually had to play it out, right? I think basically all of the 5 and 1s had to play. So the question becomes, now that all of them have had to play, if this does result in a unintentional draw, are they live because of so many X1s playing? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, that's tournament math that I frankly don't know.
Well, we don't have it in front of us, but very interesting.
It is interesting. I mean, and it does mean that I think even if Nikachu can play to the draw, he should, which is, maybe not what I think people would want to see. Because I think with the second Atraxa in play, it's very likely that Charlie is going to win this one as game goes on. Yeah. And because of that, people I think are going to be more of a fan of trying to see, Charlie actually win it. But I mean, I think if Nikachu can play to a draw, the tournament math might really want him to. Now we'll see exactly if that does happen. Another devil maid can't attack, but we can lay the beatdowns with the Fable, the Goblin Shaman token, and the devil this turn, which is the second to last turn that Charlie Dusterberg will get. Of course, Nikachu going to get 2 more turns through this as well. He's going to get turn 3 and turn 5. And here's 3
I'm not sure
points
if there's any line. I guess we'll see what the draw step is here, but I'm almost confident at this point there's not a line for Nikachu to find lethal. That said, maybe I don't know. Maybe you hit a drowner or something here, and you just tap down a track so you can get an attack in. But overall, it just seems difficult. There's another blocker, so yeah, I'm not sure there's anything available to Nikachu here, but perhaps trying to find a draw. Also not sure if Charlie can come up with 14 points of damage though.
Yeah, I mean that's the question: is can Charlie even do it? And what can Nikachu find? I mean, he's flooded out so bad in this late game. The Odawara, a land he was actually excited to draw,
Yeah.
but the other 2 follow-ups not great. As here comes another Sentinel of the Nameless City, offers another blocker. And I think, like I said, all but guarantees his ability to stay alive. And I think you're interested in making Kumina unblockable and gunning down one of these Obnicholas to help the damage math. You keep the land in hand. That way, of course, to discard. And then you can take down one of the other ones and not give any free points there. Another Sentinel on top. Okay. Late to the party, guys.
So it's a 4-power Kumina now. That's enough to take down creatures or planeswalkers, but it's not going to be enough to do anything with life. So Charlie feeling pretty comfortable that he won't be losing this one, and now from his seat, you're just trying to think, how can I come up with 14 points of damage on my turn?
Yeah, like that's the big question now is like, can Charlie actually win this? It's not, actually Smuggler's Copter makes things a lot harder.
Yeah,
even
probably
with Ras and stuff like that, yeah, I don't know that you're supposed to play that land. I think you hold it for obs, you don't take damage. But either way, this is the last turn Charlie will get. He needs to find 14 points if he wants to win it. Otherwise, like I said, I think it's very likely that we see an unintentional draw here as the first Fable is going to flip. And yeah, we didn't even talk about that. Like the 2 Fables provide so much inevitability if this game did progress on. So like I said, I think in a lot of spots where it's just clean, losing is out, winning is in, there would be maybe a case for some kind of concession and things like that. You talk about like it being good sportsmanship, whatever, things like that. In this case, that's not the case. I do think an unintentional draw could reasonably still give them fighting chances at upscaled pricing and maybe even top 8 contention.
Certainly matters for pricing as well.
It is correct for both players, really, if you can't win, to play for a draw. And I think that's what Nikachu's seat is about right now. As here is some thinking, it looks like a little bit of a crowd gathered around. As like I said, I believe we are in time, obviously. So these players kind of talk.
Fireshoe says the NFL doesn't let you draw into the playoffs, but they do let you play the Jets.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about some problems with the NFL for quite a while. I think we could point to some games where maybe some players weren't giving their best efforts. I just theoretically just throwing that out there. I'm not saying that removing draws solves anything. Okay, I don't.
Oh, there's a handshake.
Okay,
Charlie Dusterberg takes it down.
Ob. Oh, I think second ob was actually good enough to do the last damage because you get 2. And then they both can ding you for 2. That's 4 extra damage. I think that's actually the extra damage he needs. So Charlie Dusterberg going to be victorious. And I mean, a victory is certainly top 8 contention locked. So with that, as again, this was one of our last matches playing. They were in turns as the feature match, which means they have a little bit of extension too. So the round is completely over. So we are going to be taking a very quick break, and then we will bring you the top 8 of this 5K Pioneer Showdown, the last event of 2024 outside of the championship. This is the end of season 2. All comes down to this. For one player of our top 8, they will be punching their late ticket, but ticket nonetheless, to the 2024 championship. Do not go anywhere. We'll be back with our top 8 very shortly.